And so every time I'm asked to teach, especially with actual audience, I feel a little bit timid because sharing Dharma is my responsibility, but at the same time, it's a huge responsibility because the Buddha Dharma is meant to free our minds. And that's a huge responsibility. So I would like to start this evening's talk by requesting all of you to take the first step toward complete freedom of the mind, which is actually the aspiration for all beings to be free in their minds so that they can enjoy ultimate bliss and freedom. And that is why we're practicing the Dharma. And that is why we engage in the Dharma path. So let's say this prayer led by, where's Tracy? Would you please lead the prayer for the opening prayers of refuge and bodhicitta? Does everybody have the liturgy? Oh, not today. Okay. Huh? That's okay. Today is a little more informal, so maybe we'll skip that. We'll just, sometimes chanting is just chanting, but what's more important is what's in our minds, what we think of. So please participate in today's teaching with the motivation and inspiration or aspiration that that you're here, including myself. I'm here to talk about some of the songs of the great yogi and accomplished master, whose name is Milarepa, so that there can be a further understanding of why we practice the Dharma and why it is important to give rise to renunciation toward the mundane attachments and renunciation toward the samsaric existence. And the reason for that is because the more we can be totally engaged in the Dharma, the more we will be able to see into the nature of our existence, which is nothing other than the nature of our mind. All existence arises from our mind, and that mind's nature is the Buddha nature. And so hopefully through seeing these songs and the teachings of the great master, we can get a glimpse into how we can actually realize the liberation and freedom of the entanglements of the mind. And the ultimate aspiration is not just for oneself to be liberated, but for all beings to be liberated. So with that in mind, maybe we'll just go into the first song by the great yogi Milarepa. And before we look at the songs, I'd like to just say a little bit about who Milarepa is. I believe most of you already have heard about him or know his life story, but just in case there are some of you who are new. So in case I'm under the wrong assumption, who among you are new to Buddhism? Anyone? You're new to Buddhism? Some of you are? Okay. Thank you for coming and being so brave to be here. So Milarepa was a, a almost one of the most well-known yogis and accomplished masters in the Tibetan Buddhist history, and he was a man of the 10th, 11th century or so, and he was born into a very wealthy family. His father, his name is Miller Sherpjalten. So Miller, I assume, is some sort of a family name. And unfortunately, Milarepa's father passed away in his middle age, leaving his wife and 2 children. And he told his brother that that his possessions, his children should be taken care of by him, his brother. Unfortunately, his brother and his brother's wife were not very kind people, and they gave a lot of hardships and difficulties to Milarepa's family. And so much so, and there was so much suffering that Milarepa's mother could not endure it anymore. And he asked Milarepa to go and study magic so that they could take revenge on the uncle who had really mistreated them. And Milarepa followed his mother's advice and studied magic from different teachers in order to take revenge. And he was very successful. So he cast a terrible spell on his own village, killing 37 people, including his uncle's family, and destroyed most of the crops of the village. But when this was all done, Milarepa realized that he had created terrible karma, and that he would have to suffer, consequences karmically. So his mind turned toward the Buddha Dharma, and he wanted to be able to purify all the misdeeds that he had performed. Eventually, at the age of 38, he was introduced to his main teacher, whose name is Marba. And he studied under Marba for about 12 years, according to this biography I was looking at. But mainly, the years that he spent with Marba was only 6 years, and then there's the other years he studied, at the instruction and under the guidance of Marba, but not directly, not in his presence. He was wandering in caves and other places, doing his practice alone. And he became extremely accomplished in his practice. So in his years of wandering from solitary places, from one place to the other, people came to him and wanted to receive teachings from him. And usually he would give teachings in the form of songs. In the Tibetan, it's called kur. Kur doesn't mean just any song. Kur particularly means songs that were sung by enlightened masters that contain meaningful teachings. So he sang many of those songs, and they have been collected. And nowadays we have a book called The 100,000 Songs of Milarepa. There are no 100,000 songs, maybe, I don't know, 100 songs in them or something like that. But it's called 100,000 Songs because just because it's a direct translation from the Tibetan word kurbum. Bum means 100,000, but it's kind of just exaggeration. Anyway, and Milarepa himself, endured extreme hardship during his wandering retreat. he had almost no food, to the point where he was so thin, like a skeleton. He had no clothes, just like a thin cotton cloth, if at all. And uh, and yet he was very happy, because, as I said in the beginning, all these practices of the Buddha Dharma is really for just one purpose, which is to see into what this mind really is, and to realize the infinite freedom that's really the essence and nature of the mind, which is what we call the Buddha nature. And this nature, we say it's emptiness, because when we look at the mind, there's really not a mind that you can grasp. There's no such thing as the mind's shape or color or anything like that. But there is this nature which is boundless, is endowed with infinite qualities, which is infinite wisdom and infinite bliss. And that's the nature of our mind. But we don't experience it because we have been obscured by our negative karma. And so while he was in these retreats, although his external conditions are extremely difficult and he had almost nothing, but he was always happy. And in many of these songs, he told people who came to seek advice from him and teachings from him, he said, well, if you continue to be attached to worldly things and trying to seek happiness and freedom through possessing things, through seeking worldly gains, you will never be happy. There's no way. Because the more you want, the more you're conditioned by these wishes and desires, and they will become a bondage for you. You will never be free. And because you will never be free, you will never be happy. So I think it's very meaningful for us, therefore, to just read some of these songs, and I hope these songs will inspire us to stop looking outwardly for happiness, and instead to really look inward for true inner joy. And if there's anything that you can take home from this evening's talk, I think that I hope that will be it. That from this point onward, we will no longer seek success, possessions, family, and business, or school, doing well in school. All those things we consider as important, and having them or being successful in these things being the source of our pride and contentment and happiness. I think those are temporary, as the teachings say. Ultimate and permanent happiness does not come from external successes and possessions and gains. It comes from your own mind, because the mind itself is great bliss, is great freedom, and is great wisdom. So we have to work from within the mind and not outward conditions. So let's look at the first song. And there's always some sort of background story to all of these songs. And so the first one is a song of firm resolution. Do you all have the handouts? A lot of you don't have, so that's okay. We can, if you have it on your device, that's good, please follow. If you don't, I will just read it out loud so you can hear it. May I say the link? People can download it now. The link, yeah. If you have a phone, you can just type it, and right? Is that type and you should be able to download? Is that what you're saying, Honey Jane? How many of you do not have the songs with you? Just okay, quite a few actually. Okay, so maybe, and you all have your phone with you, right? You can. No, you don't. Mm, Uh, okay. Is there a printer here? Okay. Okay. For now, I may be. For now, we can maybe just, yeah. While you're waiting, I will read the background of this song. So what happened was that Milarepa had been away from home, away from his family for many, many years. First was, like I said, studying with magicians who taught him techniques for, casting spells, which caused him to kill many people. And then he turned to the Buddha Dharma and was able to study and practice under his teacher Marba. And this also, took several years at the least. And finally, he had a dream where he saw, his old house. It was dilapidated and run down and was in a very poor shape. It was a very good mansion-like house before. And so he asked his teacher, Marba, to allow him to go home to visit his family. And Marba said, okay, you can go. So he returned to his home village. And when he got home, here's what was written in his biography. It says, the news of the death of my mother and the disappearance of my sister filled my heart with despair and sorrow. I hid myself in a nook till past sunset, where I wept bitterly. After sunset, I went to the village, and behold, I saw my house exactly in the condition I had seen in my dream. The fine house, which used to be like a temple, was in the most dilapidated and ruinous condition. The set of sacred volumes had been damaged by the rain leaking in, and thick layers of dust and earth fallen from the ruined roof covered them. They were serving as nests for birds and mice. Wherever I looked, desolation and ruin met me, so that I was overwhelmed with despondency. Groping my way towards the outer rooms, I found a heap of earth and rags, over which a large quantity of weeds and grass had grown. On shaking it up, I found it to be a heap of human bones, which instinctively I knew to be my mother's. A deep and unutterable yearning seized me. So unbearable was the thought that I should never more see my mother, that I was about to lose consciousness. I made a pillow of my mother's bones and remained in an undistracted state of clear and deep meditation, where I realized that it was indeed possible to save both my parents from the pain and miseries of samsaric existence. And 7 days and 7 nights, I rose from the samadhi. Samadhi means very deep, unmoving meditation. Upon reflection, I came to the conclusion that there was no permanent benefit to any state of samsara existence. Samsara exists meaning this mundane worldly existence that goes in a cycle around and around and never could get out of it. I made the decision to go to the Jagatsasu. This Jagatsasu cave is a cave where he stayed a lot and spent my life in meditation. I was determined to sit there day and night until death. I repeated my vows to devote my life to rigid asceticism until a realization of the ultimate truth and resolved to adhere to them firmly. In an almost frenzied mood, I sang the following song of firm resolution. So this song was sung pretty much to himself, not to anyone else that was there. So here's the song. It says, and in many of Milarepa's songs, he begins the song with an homage to his teacher Marba. So likewise, this is what he says. Essence of Akshobhya, the compassionate Lord, Marba the translator, following his instructions, I came to my homeland, a prison of Maras. So here it says essence of Akshobhya. Akshobhya is one of the what we call the five Buddha in the five Buddha family, and Akshobhya is the Buddha of the Eastern Buddha family. His color is blue. So he's addressing his teacher Marba as the essence of the Akshobhya Buddha, and he's a compassionate Lord because Akshobhya also is known for his vow when he was aspiring to attain Buddhahood that he would never ever become angry for any reason until he reached complete enlightenment. So we can say he's the embodiment of compassion and patience. And so following his teacher, Maba's the translator, because Maba was very fluent in Sanskrit and went to India a few times. So following Maba's instructions, Milarepa came back to his homeland. But then he called his homeland a prison of Maras. Mara meaning demonic beings, who create obstacles. Why does he say his home village, homeland, is a prison of Maras? Because I think it's kind of not just a description of his homeland, but any place, any mundane place where people gather, because of not understanding the nature of mind, because of not understanding that our nature is pure, that is without any suffering in its own nature, because we don't understand that, and we fixate on a solid mind, which we call our mind, my mind, and we take this mind as me, and the body that is, that contains this mind, we call me, my body. And because we fixate on this solidity of there being a me and a my mind, it creates all sorts of problems for us, because everything we do is to satisfy and make this body and mind happy, thinking that they are real and solid. And for that reason, we become a prison of our own selves, because we create that prison, which does not exist at all. It should not exist. If we only knew that this mind and this body are not really what we think they are. And that's why ourselves being the prisoner of our own mind that we create, the external environment also becomes a prison, because it's an extension of this self-created mind and self-created body and self-created perception of there being a truly existent self. And so the entire environment, the entire external environment becomes a prison for ourselves. And we kind of just lock ourselves in this conditioned world where we think this really exists, that really exists because I really exist. And I'm bound by my own perception of this self. So he calls it, Milarepa here calls it the prison of Mara, prison of demonic beings. And those demonic beings are um, metaphoric. They are not really Maras or really demonic beings. They are really just this concept. This Mara is really the cause and the source of these demonic beings. Is just that concept, that idea that there is everything truly exists, everything, especially me, I truly exist and I truly have a mind. And that mind is this thought and that thought. And most of those thoughts are because of the idea that I truly exist. And because of that, we do all sorts of things to make our loved ones happy, and to gain this and that, so that we can be happier. And that there's no end to our desires. And therefore, there's always a certain degree of suffering because of lack of fulfillment and satisfaction. And that all because of this idea of self, of there being a truly existent mind. It is very difficult to understand because I have previously said there's the mind's nature, and then now I'm saying there's not truly existent mind. So what are you saying? There is the mind we assume to be the mind, which we think maybe it's the brain, or maybe it's our thoughts. That's the mind. That is the function, the outer function of the mind that's perceived as something that's thinking or something that is perceiving. That's the function of mind. Yes, there are those seeming functions of the mind, but when we look at the nature of the mind, we find nothing. That's what I'm talking about. If you look at what this mind really is, you can't describe what that mind really is. That nature is what we're trying to understand and to realize. And when we can really realize and experience that nature, that is the time when we reach Buddhahood, when we can be liberated from all the samsaric existence. So here it says, the prison of Maras. It's pretty much self-created. And seeing, his home turning into a pile of dust and ruins, and seeing the corpse, not even a corpse, the bones of his mom, he said, "Here I have obtained a teacher of impermanence and illusion." Nothing is permanent, because now it used to be such a grand house. Now it's just a dust and stones, and it's like an illusion. Nothing is really truly there. It can change any moment. So he continues, "I have been blessed to gain certainty and confidence in this teacher of impermanence and illusion." So it says, I have been blessed to gain certainty and confidence in this excellent teacher. And then he continues saying to himself, "In general, all that appears and exists are impermanent, unstable, and transient." And that is true, because it's not just the nature of the mind that is, the nature of the mind is something that's always there, whether we realize it or not. Whether we see what that mind, for what it really is or not, it doesn't change what it really is. It doesn't become stained just because you don't see its purity. And it doesn't become purer just because you see its purity. It doesn't change. But at the same time, that mind can perceive, and that mind can create. That mind can be the source of our karma based on how we behave with our body, speech, and mind. And that karma will dictate how our lives go from from lifetime to lifetime. And so in a way, even though we have certain degree of control of our own mind, of what our mind wants to think, on the other hand, sometimes we don't really have a whole lot of control because of the force and habit from past karma. And at the same time, these perceptions of the mind can change from moment to moment. And because the perceptions of the mind, the thoughts of the mind can change from moment to moment, and all the external things are projections of the mind, and therefore we can perceive also that the external environment can also change from moment to moment because the mind changes. And also, a second reason why Milarepa says everything that appears and exists is impermanent is because that's the nature of existence. There's nothing that is solidly existent, and it can change anytime because the components can change at any time. Therefore, nothing is really truly permanent. Even if they remain seemingly unchanging for long periods of time, there still would come a time when it will change or disappear or cease to exist. And so he sees that very clearly. He says, I see that nothing is stable or permanent. Everything is just transient. And he continues, specifically, things of samsara are meaningless. They're meaningless because it goes nowhere. It just goes around and comes back again. It goes around and around and around. Rather than doing meaningless things, I will go and practice the meaningful divine dharma, because that the divine dharma, the sacred dharma, is the only thing that will lead you out of this circle, this cycle of existence. You will no longer go around and around. You will go straight out of that balloon where you can't get out. You know, you cannot. When we're in this mundane samsaric world, we will wander in what we call the 6 realms of existence, you know, from the highest celestial realm to below that, the demigods or the asuras, and then below that, human realm. Below that are what we call the 3 lower realms. That these 3 lower realms will experience a lot more suffering than the human realm. So below the human realm is the animal realm, characterized by their ignorance. And then below that is the hungry ghost realm, characterized by hunger and thirst. And below that is the hell realm, characterized by extreme suffering for extreme long periods of time. So all sentient beings will wander in these 6 realms of existence from lifetime to lifetime and cannot get out of it. They have no choice. They have to be in it. And the only reason for that is because there's the only reason why they have no choice and they have to just go along with the karma they create. The only reason for that, do you know why? Anybody? Karma and ignorance. Ignorance about what? That's correct. That's correct. And because of ignorance of what the mind's true nature is, they fixate on a truly existent self. And it's that fixation that's causing the suffering in the 6 realms of existence. So he says, well, let's practice the Dharma then. That's the only way out of this 6 realms of existence. And then he says, first, when my father was alive, I, as his son, wasn't there for him because he was too young. When I was there, he had passed away. When he grew up a little bit, his father passed away. Even if we had been together, there would have been no meaning because we would have been together for doing samsaric things, mundane things just to gain more wealth or to be successful in this and that. And that leads to no permanent happiness, no ultimate happiness. So this son will practice the meaningful divine Dharma and go to the Jagadaso cave to meditate. This was about the father. And then the mother. When my mother was alive, I, the son, was away. When I returned home, she had passed away, as we have seen. Even if we had been together, there would have been no meaning. Because again, we have been just kind of doing this and that, and when we die again, it's another cycle. So this son will practice the meaningful divine Dharma and go to the Jagadaso cave to meditate. Now the sister, he has a sister. When my sister was at home, I, as her brother, was away because he went to seek teachers and to practice the Dharma. When this brother returned home, I found her gone astray. In fact, unfortunately, his sister, because of lack of resources, had to leave home to beg. And so she became a beggar. Even if we had been together, there would have been no meaning. So I will practice the meaningful divine Dharma and go to the Jagadaso cave to meditate. And now talking about the sacred scriptures in the house. When there were sacred scriptures, there was no caretaker. They were just, sitting on the shelves. When the caretaker arrived, which means himself, they had been ruined by drops of water. Even if both had been present, there would have been no meaning, because it's not the sacred text that liberates you. It's the practice based on the text that liberates you. You can't just talk and read and expect to be enlightened. There's no way. You have to do the practice. So I will practice the meaningful divine Dharma and go to the Jagadaso cave to meditate. When the house was there was no owner, because their house was pretty much given to Milarepa's uncle to take care of. When the owner arrived, the house was dilapidated. Even if both had been there, there would have been no meaning. You have a house and then you have to take care of it and you have to have income to maintain it and all that. It's meaningless. So I will practice the meaningful divine Dharma and go to the Jagadaso cave to meditate. And they also had a lot of land. So he says, when the field was fertile, the farmer was away because, everybody, he left and his mother was incapable of farming and his sister had to go begging. When the farmer came, the field was overgrown with weeds. Even if both had been there, there would have been no meaning. So you do some farming, you sell the crops and you sustain your livelihood in this way. But so what? What's the meaning of the life if you just live like this? So I will practice the meaningful divine Dharma and go to the Jagadaso cave to meditate. And finally, he sings, homeland, old home, home field, and so on are things of samsara and meaningless. Any timid being who likes them can take them. As for me, the yogi, I will go to practice that which liberates. Father, the greatly kind Marba, the translator, bless this beggar to stay in retreat. He calls himself a beggar because he had no position, and if he needed something, somebody had to offer it to him. But a lot of times he had nothing, and he was in such isolated places that nobody could get to, and he wouldn't receive any offerings from others or gifts from others either. So he grew his own, what's that plant called? Yeah, nettle, and that was all he ate. It became green. So, yeah, so he just stayed in retreat in that way, sustaining on extremely little food to almost no food. So that's the first song, and I hope that it's inspiring to hear this song, because we live in a almost exactly opposite kind of life, where we just can't even entertain any kind of thought of living a life fully dedicated to spiritual pursuit. Our mind is filled with only mundane pursuits. And are we happy? Are we truly happy? Probably not, because there's a void in the mind, and that cannot be filled. And that void really comes from the fact that that's where the nature of mind can fit in. That's where the practice of the Buddha Dhamma can actually fill that void, because there is a natural, I think there's a natural voice in our minds that tells us that there's something more than what we know. There's something more than what we think is what we want. And that is because our mind itself is telling us, I'm here. Look at me, look at me. Look at me for what I really am. And if you can look at me and truly recognize me, you'll be much happier, because that is the source of all happiness and all bliss. And I truly hope that we can start looking into the mind itself and at the mind itself, because that is really what Buddha's practice is. It's nothing other than that. You see the Buddha's images, you see all sorts of rituals, and there's meditation techniques and all sorts of things you can do, all sorts of teachings you can listen to. And the Buddha taught many different kinds of teachings to suit all sorts of different students. But what do all these do? What's the ultimate goal for all these practices and chantings and meditations and this and that? Why do we do all that in Buddhist practice? There's only one purpose, and that is to recognize the mind's nature for what it really is. That's all. You can use any technique you want that suits you. That's fine. But always remember why you're doing that. And there's only one reason. And I've said it many times already. That reason you should know now. Okay, so this song was kind of abbreviated by its own as the 17th Karmapa. in 2009 when he directed a play called The Life of Milarepa, in which the actor Milarepa sung many songs that were taken from the songs of 100,000 songs of Milarepa, and he had to make these songs a little shorter to fit in the play. Otherwise, it would take too long to sing. So the next song is the same song, but it's a short version of the song that we just talked about. And I'm going to play the song that was sung by the Romdek Monastery main chant leader, or Omze in Tibetan. It's supposed to be sung by Milarepa on stage, but the actor probably couldn't sing very well, so there's this other voice coming in, and we're gonna hear this very nice voice that represents Milarepa. Okay, so I'm gonna just play from my computer. I hope you can hear it. And for those of you who don't have the song, I guess you can just listen. But those of you who do have it, please sing along. It's in Tibetan, so you can read from the phonetics that's provided here. It kind of disappeared from my computer. It's a second. Okay. So that was the song. I'm sorry some of you didn't get to to sing along or to read the words. So I hope that by reading this song, it inspires us to, if you're already engaged in the practice of the Dharma, that it will inspire you to be more diligent and to be less attached to concerns of worldly things and less wishes and desires, for worldly gains and possessions and things like that. And if you have not yet entered into the gate of the Buddha Dharma, the Buddha's teachings, I hope that'll inspire you to wish to study and read more about it and to understand more about the points that I have mentioned this evening. Because without understanding, it is meaningless to do any kind of Buddhist practice. You can meditate, that's all fine, that's good for everyone. But you have to really understand why we do the practices, the purpose of it. The techniques can be any range or any variety of techniques, based on your karmic affiliation of uh, the meditative techniques or practices that you have done probably in previous lives that then in this life naturally you're drawn to. But whether it's Tibetan Buddhism, Chinese Buddhism, South Asian Buddhism, any form of Buddhism that you're drawn to, it doesn't matter, because it all comes down to just the essence of the Buddha's teaching, which is to realize that what we call me is just an our own mental perception and is not really there. And this cannot be fully grasped or understood unless we practice it. Unless we practice what the Buddha taught. It cannot be fully realized by just listening to what I say or what others say or what the book says. You can have a kind of an intellectual understanding, but you can never really get to the core of it and really understand and realize it unless you meditate and you do the practices. And without these meditations and practices, you will not realize what you really are, and you will not realize what really represents you. That which represents you is just your mind. Everything about you is because of your mind. So understand the mind, please. You need to understand the mind, not just the attributes of the mind, which is projected by your own mind. You need to come to understand what the mind itself really is. And that is important. Make that the most important thing of your life, and you'll be gradually happier, and you will see things in a completely different light, and you will begin to experience what others do not experience. And so I hope that you will bear that in mind, keep that in mind, and as you pursue further, or as you begin the Buddhist path, I hope that that'll help you. And I think there are many songs that have passed out, but we don't have to read through all of them because they're all very similar. I think it's more important to really get what Milarepa is trying to tell us to do, rather than just to read through and just, oh, it's I've read many of his songs. What does that do? If it doesn't change your attitude, if it doesn't make a change in your mind about how you see the world and how you see what's important in your life, then it's a waste of time to read all the entire 100,000 songs. It's meaningless. It has to make some sort of impact in your mind, and so that it brings goodness in you, brings something better in your life. Then it's, even if it's just read one song, then it's worth it. It's meaningful. So I think that's good for tonight, because I was told there should be time left for questions. If you have questions, we have 20 minutes here. Yeah.
Thank you so much for coming all the way up to Maine. I have a question about the practice of meditation and also how to be in the world.
Yes.
As the goal is to help all people to achieve realization, but from my limited perspective, from what I'm able to understand, sitting in silent meditation is ultimately, it can appear somewhat selfish. And wondering how to help perceive how to help understand how working on ourselves as a solitary pursuit, how to balance that with the desire to also want to be an agent of change for all beings.
Yes. I was asked to repeat the questions because of the recording. So basically you're asking, how in a kind of a solitary meditation, just meditating on your own can be of benefit to others. It seems a little selfish. That's the gist of it, yeah. That is why your motivation is so important. That's why in the beginning of this class, I asked everyone to give rise to the motivation that may this session, bring benefit to all beings. That it brings not just temporary happiness, but ultimate bliss and happiness, which is Buddhahood. In everything we do, particularly things that we do that are virtuous, such as engaging in meditation or performing generosity, helping others, being kind and loving to others, and doing practices, all these things, we need to, first of all, think that I'm doing these things so that all beings can be liberated from suffering, so that all beings can have happiness now and forever. When you do that, then it's whatever you do, the meditation or any practice that you do is no longer selfish. It's not for yourself, it's for others that we're doing this. And then at the end, and when you finish the meditation, again you dedicate it to all beings for their ultimate liberation and happiness. In that way, in the beginning and in the middle and in the end, everything you do is for others. So it's completely contrary to being selfish. Truly, even though you don't see any benefit for others right now, like you're just sitting there trying to meditate, who is benefiting from it? You don't see anything, but it is already benefiting because of what's in your mind, what you're thinking. It leads to that goal. I hope this helps. Okay. Any other questions? Yeah.
How then does what you just said relate to very physical anguish and suffering in the world? I understand how meditation practice can be beneficial to others, but I worry that some people are in such distress that the likelihood of being able to gain awareness is out of reach. So I have an inclination, I want to help relieve that kind of physical suffering, which can become political and, work with social issues. So can you offer some insight or wisdom about how the inner and the outer, work together, the dynamic of that?
Right. That's a very good question. I'm afraid I would have a hard time repeating what you said. You said it so beautifully. Can someone come to the Steve? You want to repeat the question for me on the so that it can be recorded? I don't know how you do it. You have to use this. Just use the microphone. Okay. Maybe just pass the mic.
Oh, should we do that? Should we pass it to Jen? Yeah,
Or maybe they come up to the mic. Maybe.
Jen, maybe you could paraphrase yourself.
Yeah, you could. I think everybody heard the question. You can just kind of make it short.
So the gist of the question is, how do we connect the inner practice with the outer suffering that is happening in the world?
Mhm.
Is that
Yeah.
okay?
Yes, indeed. The outer suffering comes from the inner conflict. It's always like that. If we don't have inner conflict, there would be no outer conflict or war or suffering. So it comes down to, again, everyone needs to work on their own mind. But of course, not everybody's going to do that. So the world continues. Samsara continues. That's very sad. It's not something that can be resolved quickly or in a lifetime. And that is why seeing that it becomes ever more important for us not to ever give up our practice and just, Practicing is not doing anything, but if I go out and do something, it's going to immediately have some effect. We see that, but that's short-sighted, actually. You know, maybe you can create some positive influence or impact or resolution if you go and do something. But that's going to maybe only solve part of the problem. The ultimate problem you're not trying to solve, which is everybody's mind. It all comes from the mind. And you're trying to solve the outer appearances of the mind. That can be helpful to a degree, but you know, how much can you do? Maybe not a whole lot by one person. And if you gather a group of people, maybe there's more power, more influence, and perhaps you can really, you know, create some sort of impact. But again, if that's solved, something else is bound to happen again. It's endless. Things of the world, conflicts and wars and sufferings, it's endless. There's no end to your effort to save the world. Meanwhile, you abandon your practice to save the world, and the world cannot be saved. So that's why Milarepa said, well, this, you know, you need to practice. Because there are many people who don't believe in the Buddha's teachings. Those people can be busy saving the world. But you, you want to practice so that you can bring ultimate peace to people's minds. And you have that ability. If you can have that ability, if you practice. So it's more important. You're welcome. Yeah, anything else? So everybody understood everything? Of course, no problem. Yeah, please come up.
Thank you for your wisdom. I want to understand a little bit better the idea of the mind and how could just be my understanding, but I feel like there's two realities where, you know, I have to come up here and speak to a microphone and, you know, be observed and have that like external mind be present.
Yes.
How can I balance between like this reality of having an external mind that's observed and discusses things versus the more internal mind or absolute mind that you were discussing earlier?
Yes, that's an excellent question. I did, you know, that's a good question because there's, I guess we can call it the absolute mind and the relative mind. The relative mind is the thoughts that we perceive, the emotions, the perceptions, the projections. All these are the relative mind. We see emotions as kind of separate from the mind, but emotions are nothing other than the mind. The mind is all those, you know? And that's the relative mind. And we take that relative mind as a true mind, and that's my mind. And then this evening we talked about the nature of the mind, the true mind. That we can, okay, we call it the absolute mind. That is something we have not seen. We have not experienced, have not seen or recognized. We have heard that it's pure, it's, you know, it's blissful, it's luminous. There's a quality of extreme clarity to it, and there's wisdom to it, and there's compassion in it, all that. But we feel that we have not seen it. But actually, we have. Because even if we just experience kind of mundane, worldly level of happiness, that happiness comes from that nature. Otherwise, where does it come from? And even if we have experienced some sort of clear intellectual quality in our mind, that comes from that nature of the mind. So we have experiences, just not its full extent, not its fullness. And even when we wish for something, we crave something, we are, grasping onto something. The nature of that is also the mind, because the mind wants it yearns for a sense of completeness. It wants to have something that includes everything. You want to have everything, right? You want to have everything in the world, kind of. And that is because the mind itself is complete by itself. It's what we call the expanse, or the Dhamma Dhatu. It's complete and it includes everything. Everything is included in it. That's why, as an extension of that nature, you want everything. So we have seen kind of a more relative level of that mind. So now what we want to work on is to, from that relative level, lead into the ultimate level and see it's what it really is. It's kind of easy because that's just your mind. What's so big, what's a big deal? You're with your mind, and you are your mind. So, you're inseparable from your mind. So what's so difficult? Why does it take so many years and even lifetimes to practice just to see what that mind is? It's true. We should be able to just see it right now. And so just look at it right now. And that's all there is, really. But because we have doubts and we have layers of obscurations and karmic habits, it's not so easy. But at the same time, the relative and the absolute, we seem to separate them. The relative is relative, the absolute is absolute. Like your question, how do you balance the two? If you see the two as separate, then they are separate. But if you don't see them as separate, then there's no problem. You don't need to balance them. You don't need to merge them, because what's relative is not separate from the ultimate. Okay, so finally at the end, let's just do a very short meditation where you don't need to do anything. Just sit and relax your body and mind, and think that this state of relaxation is the nature of your mind. But don't make up something thinking this must be the nature of the mind. Just don't make anything up. Just sit and relax. Okay. All right. And finally, I'd like to dedicate the merit of this Dharma talk to the temporary and ultimate freedom and happiness of all sentient beings. And I would also especially like to thank the organizing center for their kindness in inviting me and for all their work in putting this together. And I would like to thank Milarepa, the great yogi, for singing these wonderful songs so that we as practitioners can learn from his life example. Thank you for coming. Okay, see you tomorrow.